Welcome. We are live. This is the first episode of the Preserving Wisdom podcast. I'm sitting here with my childhood buddy, Mike Andrews. For those of you that may not have listened to the little trailer that I cut, the whole intention of this podcast was just to talk to folks, to learn a little bit about their lives and see if we could pick up little nuggets of wisdom that they've learned throughout their journey so far. So without further ado, I'd like to just introduce my friend Mike. If you want to, just tell us a little bit about yourself. Let's go back. Let's talk to you about your childhood and your family and all that good stuff.
Oh man, childhood. Where do I start? I had a great childhood. Growing up in the 80s was it's a generation that's just gone now. Like nobody will ever understand what it was like growing up in the 80s unless you grew up in the 80s. It was just a great time. There was no cell phone interference. There was no internet. There was just people on top of people. Just you went to your buddy's house, you screamed as loud as you could for him to come outside, and if his parents didn't mind, he came out, and that was it. You were out for the day, man. There was nothing really distract you other than just your buddies having a good time, and from growing up with us, we just had a great time, man. Whether we were skateboarding or whether we were just walking around town doing what we do, and it was just a great time. My parents were hardworking middle class. I don't even pretend to complain about the way they raised me. I have no complaints at all. One of four kids, third in line. My father affectionately called me number 3 because he said it was easier to remember the numbers than the names, which obviously was a joke. But, it was an interesting childhood. Growing up in the 80s was just, in my opinion, the coolest time to grow up. You didn't have to worry about who was texting you, who was posting something online about you. And it was just a simpler time, man. It was great.
Amen. And where did you grow up?
Belleville, New Jersey.
Excellent. Take me back to some of your earlier childhood memories. So you're one of 4 siblings. How many years apart are your siblings?
My oldest sibling is Jenny. She's 51, 52. And then 2 years later was my brother. 11 months later is me. And then 5 years later, and 5 years later is my younger sister, Jill.
Oh, that's awesome. And were you guys close growing up?
Yeah, hard to say. I mean, we were all close. Everybody, with the age spread, everybody kind of did their own thing. Jenny was just a perfect big sister, just kind of ushered us into teenage life, I guess. Just kind of not even trying to teach me, taught me a lot of stuff about just being a teenager and how to let stuff roll off my back and just how to be a cool kid, kind of. Yeah. Because I think, she was the cool kid. She was my older sister. She was a cool kid. She knew a lot of people. I met a lot of people through her. I think I met you through her, actually.
Probably, yeah.
I'm sure I did. So it was a pretty normal childhood, and I think I'm thankful for it. I love the way I grew up. I love everything about my childhood. I don't have any complaints. I'm not bitching about one single thing. Oh, my dad drank too much. My mom was too this. My mom was too that. Whatever. It just being an adult, you can look back and see the struggle that your parents had. I mean, they had 4 kids. My mom was 24 years old by the time she had her 4th kid.
Wow.
I can't imagine that.
No.
I can't even imagine being the age I am now and having 4 kids, So their responsibilities were huge for them, and the way they handled it was awesome.
Yeah. You said they were blue collar. What did they do for a living?
My father worked for ADT Alarm Systems. He was all over the place. He went from being an armed guard to a dispatcher to an installer to a manager. Then there was that big scandal. Company that owned ADT got caught up in some money stuff. I don't remember exactly what it was, but he wound up getting put back to an installer from a manager, and then worked his way back up to a manager after that. And my mom worked for the court system, Belleville Court. She was the deputy court clerk for a lot of years. Worked her way up that as well. Started out 16, 17 years old and just lifed it from there.
It's crazy. It's like that whole generation they just got started a lot faster than we did. So I think my mom was 22 when she had me. And Jen and I was 35 when we had our first kid. It was a decade plus later. Yeah. That's what I worry about this. Our kids' generation, they may never have kids, or they'll be in their 40s by the time they wind up having kids.
Yeah. I was 29 when we had Ethan. So I was quite a bit older. My parents already had 4 kids the youngest was a toddler.
Sure.
So, yeah.
How about going back to school? What are some of your earlier school memories? Elementary, middle, high school. Were you a good student? Did you play any sports?
I was a good student until middle school. I was an A student through grammar school because, it's grammar school. You have nothing else to do but go to school. But then, like, the social life hit in middle school, and I just could care less about school. I just wanted to hang out and have fun and skateboard and smoke cigarettes and, just be the cool kid and have as much fun as I possibly could. And school was like second or third on the list.
Yeah.
I barely made it through.
Truancy officers hunting you down.
Yeah.
Funny. Did you do any sports in school? I don't even remember.
I played football when I was younger. Middle school was the last time. And then it was just, I always saw sports as like, I'm skateboarding. That is a sport.
Yeah.
I'm BMXing. That is a sport. That was pretty much it after that.
That was certainly fun times. Like skating is probably when we first started hanging out sometime in the mid to late 80s, I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And even today, like some of my best friends, if you think of Ron and Dullahan and you guys, like I didn't meet them through school, really. I didn't meet them through sports or college or anything. It's just like it was.
I think when you do something like that at a social level like that, I mean, we sweated and we watched each other get better and progress, and we coached each other to get better and progress. And I think that forms a bond. Just like athletes, athletes that stay on a sports team with a guy for 10, 15 years have this bond with them because they watch them work and push them to be better. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun. We'd sweat our butts off all day trying to land that one trick. And then when we finally did, it was like the Super Bowl.
Yeah. I also remember some of the funnest parts of that is watching our friends get hurt.
Yes, absolutely.
Launch off ramps or parking blocks and you crack somebody's head.
Yeah. I remember the time behind Kmart. That was like our spot behind Kmart on the loading docks. And Brian was our ramp builder. Yeah. He went a little ham on that big ramp. And we made him hit it first. And as soon as he hit the ground, he shit his pants.
Yeah. I often think, shortly after we did that, like Jackass became super popular. Yeah. I'm like, God, if we had cameras and video cameras and stuff back then, we could have had our own shows.
Yeah. Even just recording audio back then. I mean, I think listening to it back now would have been hysterical to hear our little voices and the stuff that came out of our mouths.
I know. It's so funny. You talked about this earlier. It's like it was just easier times. Right? Simpler times.
Yeah, totally. And we had a weird group of friends. Everybody pretty much shared the same thought process and wanted to do the same things that we were doing. But then there was like Pat. Pat was he wanted to skateboard, he just couldn't. But he was there every single day, watching us, cheering us, inventing stuff for us to do. Pat was the one who'd be like, "Why don't you try and ollie this?"
Yeah,
like, I don't know.
I'm going to break my leg. That's why
I don't want to wind up like you.
Part of the crew.
Yeah.
Very cool. Any particular, think back to those skating days or any of that, any particular crazy stories around skating or hanging out or getting into fights or anything like that?
Oh, God, getting into fights. I think the crazy times started happening when John got involved.
Yeah.
Once John Dullahan got involved.
He's a bad influence.
Yeah. I mean, he was a great influence back then because it was fun. He was fun. He was a little older and got his license before any of us, so skate spots became easier to get to. And it was like instead of skating behind Kmart or at the Hut in North Arlington, we could go to Hasbrook Heights and skate Heights Plaza when it rained. So we had a place to go to stay dry when it rained. But his driving left a lot to be desired.
To say the least.
He was a maniac behind the wheel. And I remember one time going to Heights Plaza on Route 17 in John's Toyota. There was probably 6 or 7 of us in the bed of the truck because it was just a regular cab pickup. Him and his girlfriend in the front, as usual. As many skaters and boards could fit in the back, jumped in the back, and we were just going up Route 17. And I remember looking out the window and saying, "John, this is it here." And he just, without looking, cut the wheel and jumped right in front of a tractor trailer. And I'm not kidding when I tell you the tractor trailer was so close. I thought we were going to die. I reached my hand out of the truck as if I was going to stop the truck, and I touched the grill of the truck. And at the last second, he cut the wheel and turned into the plaza. And 5 minutes later, we forgot about it. We were just skating and forgot about it.
Let's go.
It was another John.
And if I can remember correctly, I think the cap on the back of that pickup wasn't attached, right? It was
It was attached by shoelaces.
Exactly.
Old shoelaces. Yeah. So when he hit a bump, it would snap up and clap down like the jaws of a T-Rex.
Yeah. Would decapitate people,
Yeah.
cut fingers off if you get your
Yeah.
fingers stuck in.
That was one of my fears riding in the back of that truck. That he would hit a road a little too bumpy and it would blow the cap off, and the cap would just decapitate all of us on its way off.
Survival of the fittest.
But he didn't care. He was in the front. He wouldn't get hurt,
Yeah,
so he didn't care. Yeah.
Yeah. What doesn't kill you builds a life experience.
Yeah, builds character.
Yeah, absolutely. How about like women, girls? Like, what is your first memory of dating or courting? I think you and I we circled around a couple girl circles.
I think our first circle was North Arlington. It came from the hut. I met Lori and you met Jackie.
That's right.
Yeah, and they were best friends, and it was kind of just like, well, if I'm dating Lori, you're dating Jackie. You know?
Are we breaking up with them yet?
Yeah. 13-year-old, 14-year-old kids just being idiots and dating in a circle. You're dating one girl, she wants to date your friend, and sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. But that was like my first serious girlfriend was Lori from North Arlington. Yeah.
Let's just go down that path a little more. In terms of like love life and stuff, like where did it go from there as you got older? Did you have any like serious long-term relationships?
Well, Lori, my first girlfriend, was my first serious long-term. I mean, I met her when I was in, it was the summer between 8th and 9th grade, and I stayed with her until I graduated high school.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize it was that long.
Yeah, it was like 4.5 years we were together.
Okay.
And then...
just grew apart, or it's like
no,
kind of a young...
She just decided she wanted to sleep with one of my best friends instead.
Not me. Not it.
Yeah, he's passed away since.
Yeah, I wonder why.
Yeah, my good friend Mike, we were pretty close. We when I graduated high school, the car scene was getting to be more my speed. When you get your license, it's especially back then, it was like, that was the achievement.
Sure.
You got your license, you made it. And there was a group of kids I went to high school with that were just car guys. They would be tinkerers and, building whatever they could throw together in their garage to make it as fast as possible. And it was a little crazier than just, driving your mom and dad's car. So, of course, I gravitated towards that. But Mike and I wound up getting really close, and we'd be hanging out in the parking lots, and often it would be him and I would be the last guys left. It was just everybody else would go home. We just didn't want to go home. We didn't have anything to go home for, so we just hung out and would talk till like 3 o'clock in the morning, and then finally call it a night. So it was a little bit of a surprise when I called her house looking for her, and her mom asked if it was the other Mike, and I was like, how do you know him? So that's kind of how I found out, and that just, that was the end of it there. I called her up, and it was one of those things, like, it was from it was a childhood love, and it ran its course a long time ago. We both should have realized it and spoke it up, but neither one of us did. When that happened, it was almost like, oof. Yeah, it was like free.
It's time to graduate. Yeah. It's time to move on.
So,
talk to me more about some of the cars. What was the first car that you remember working on, building?
The first car I tinkered with was my dad's 85 Ram that he sold me. And that was the tinkering with that was just to keep it running, because it was just an old vehicle, and it had a lot of miles, and I loved it though. It was mine. It was my first like vehicle that was actually mine, that wasn't borrowed. My grandfather passed away when I was a junior in high school, and my parents wound up getting his car, which was a box Caprice, 4-door box Caprice. I drove that for like a year, but that was kind of a shared car between me and my brother and my sister. And so to have like my own that I could take whenever I wanted, and nobody questioned it, just go, it was kind of freeing, so keeping it in good shape and keeping it running was really my only goal. And I wound up doing a bunch of work on it later on, like, replacing the transmission and motor work, and made it a little bit faster, but it was never really a competitor. It was just kind of my A to B getting around. And that unfortunately, that's every single car I had was that way.
Yeah. I love the fact that your dad sold it to you. That wasn't lost on me. I feel like too often, like parents, like just enable their kids. They create little monsters. They make little entitled
Yeah.
brats. Do you remember what you paid for it?
$700.
Nice.
Yeah.
Excellent.
It was a good deal.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time, I told him it wasn't worth $300.
Wasn't worth $7.
But it was I know it was his way of teaching me that nothing's for free. And
Yeah.
just because he had a company vehicle and that was his truck and it just sat. I would borrow it from time to time. He would give me a little grief about borrowing it. And then one day he's like, no, you're buying that truck from me. And I was like, I don't want that truck. He's like, you sound like you want it when you want to borrow it.
Right.
Good point.
Touche.
Yeah, good point. So we came up with the price. I paid him, and then I had to get my own insurance and register it in my name. And I think that was his main goal, was to get me off of his insurance.
Yeah.
Because I was a little bit of a ticket miser back then when I first got my license. A little bit of a pullover magnet.
Yep. That's funny. So let's, where do we want to go from here? Let's talk to me more about after high school. So you started fucking around in high school, but you did graduate, right? Graduated Belleville High?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you go to college, school, trade school, anything after that?
Nothing. I floated around just minimum paid jobs. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had no clue what I wanted to do. I could take the easy route and, fault my parents. I think if they really paid attention to what I'd been doing with all the tinkering, and they may have pushed me towards a trade school, that might have been a good route, but I'm happy with the route I took. I took some crappy jobs, which made me appreciate better jobs. Like, one of my first jobs was working at a warehouse for Perugina chocolate. I think I got my work ethic from my dad, because he just was a hard worker. And even when he was home on the weekends, he was always fixing the house, straightening the yard. Every weekend was a project. And I was by his side every single time, because it was me and my brother would just stay asleep. And I would get up and I would help him. And it taught me a lot. When I bought my first house, I basically gutted the entire thing on my own, not even knowing if I could do it. I just kind of like second nature for me. It was just like, yeah, this is going to happen. This is what we're going to do. And I'm going to do it. And if I didn't have those experiences with my dad, there's no way I would have been able to do that. His push to make me work every single weekend when I thought I should be hanging out with my friends. I mean, I still got time with my friends. My thought was I'd wake up on Saturday and go hang out with my friends, and then come home and eat dinner and go hang out with my friends again. But I'd wake up and I'd work with my dad all day, and then later on I'd shower and be able to go hang out with my friends. And I love the way I grew up, because it made me the person I am. So my first job was working at Perugina Chocolate in Carlstadt. I got that job through a friend of my dad's. He knew who was like a supervisor at the place. And it wound up being a pretty decent job. I got laid off from there because they slowed up. But it was like, it was very incentive orientated. Faster you worked, the more work you got.
Sure.
The more money you got. So they had this, truck drivers would come in to pick up loads for customers. And the loads had to be floor loaded. They couldn't be on pallets, so that they could fit everything they had to fit. And they had to be hand loaded. I got an opportunity to do that once. And I did it like most guys would take like 3-4 hours to do it. And I did it in an hour and a half. So my boss was like, that's it. You're getting them.
You're the floor loader.
So the good part about that is the truck driver, you would punch out and the truck driver would pay you. So the faster you worked, the more money you would make for the truck driver, because
Sure.
you're saving him time.
Time is money.
So the first time I did it, the truck driver was like, you're done? I was like, yeah. He's like, are you kidding me? He went back and checked, and he goes, this is everything. I said, it's absolutely everything. He said, man, you saved me so much time. And he handed me $350 in cash.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God.
I'm hooked.
Yeah. I mean, what was it, 1995? That was great money.
Yeah.
I saw the $350. I was like, ooh, car parts. So then from that point on, I just, every single time that was available, I got it. I killed it. And then I wound up getting laid off from there. I bounced around a little bit from there. I worked for a temp agency for a little bit, just having garbage warehouse jobs. Then I was diagnosed with lymphoma.
How old were you when that diagnosis hit?
19. Yeah.
How did you, were you having symptoms that led you to get tested, or how did you find out about that? Like, why did you go to the doctor?
I went to the doctor initially because of a rash. The doctor said the rash is more than likely a cat allergy. So just left it at that. Got some eczema medication and kind of cleared it up a little bit. And then I found a lump in my neck And I went to the doctor with that. Well, let's be honest, my mommy took me to the doctor. And I wound up getting a biopsy, and then from the biopsy, I was diagnosed. And I had no idea. I was 19 years old.
Sure.
I didn't want to be bothered with it. Like, my mom's like, "You have cancer," and I was like, "Yeah, whatever." You know?
I'm going out.
Yeah,
I got plans tonight.
I remember when the doctor called, my mom started crying, and I ran up into and she called me down. And she's like, "Come down here. I want to talk to you." I was like, "Nah, I'm good," because I saw her crying. I knew it wasn't going to be anything great. And she told me, and I didn't understand it. I was like, "All right, so what do we do from here?" Well, we got to go back to the doctor. And then, it just kind of left it in the doctor's hands because I was so young. I didn't really understand. I just left it in the doctor's hands. And thankfully the primary doctor, I can't remember his name. He wound up at the Mayo Clinic, actually. He wound up selling his practice and moving on to the Mayo Clinic. But he recommended an oncologist in Montclair. I can't remember his name. Oh, Dr. DePaolo, who took care of me. And it was the treatment was pretty rough. It was a little bit of chemotherapy, which didn't get me all that sick because I was young and strong. And then I had to do radiation. I did about 6 months of radiation, 3 months from my chin to abdomen, and then upper abdomen to lower pelvis.
Wow. And was that kicking your ass?
Oh, yeah.
More than the
That's when the weight loss came, and I couldn't eat. When I was doing the abdomen treatment, as soon as I put food in my mouth, I would throw it up. Like before I even swallowed, I would just be gagging it up, and it was rough. I mean, the only thing I could really get in was water, which, in hindsight, I don't know how I survived. I really don't. It was just I drank probably 3 gallons of water a day. Just constantly had my belly full of water. Obviously I ate something because I'm here. I don't really remember like what actually worked. I think it was just like plain pasta here and there would work. But
you were always gigantic growing up. How big do you think you were at your biggest? Were you 300? Were you ever 300 pounds?
I never hit 300. My biggest was that I saw on the scale was 292.
Okay.
And that was an eye opener. I was like, wow.
That's almost 300.
Yeah, and that was right before I had my heart attack and had heart surgery. I knew I needed to make some changes, and they didn't come fast enough.
No.
So that wound up being 30. I was 34. I was pretty surprised when I had the heart attack because I didn't think I was in as bad a shape as I was, and the doctors told me that it was because of the radiation that I had. So I had premature hardening of the arteries from the radiation because they couldn't block everything.
Sure.
And back then, radiation was pretty barbaric. They would just basically turn the machine on and clear the room and let you sit there for like 15 minutes, just getting radiated. And they had lead blocks that blocked my lungs and my heart, but that was it.
Not enough.
Not enough. And it couldn't be enough because the lymph nodes that were affected, some of them were in my chest,
sure,
around my heart. So they did what they had to do, and caught up with me and bit me a little bit. So I wound up having quadruple bypass at 34.
Jeez. What year? Go back to what you say. You're 19 when you're doing that. What year is that? It's in the 90s sometime?
Yeah, 96 probably.
Okay. And do you feel like, based on what you know, how far has the medical treatments come from that original radiation days? Is it way different?
Light years.
Yeah.
Light years. They do what they call cyberknife now, which is radiation, but it's pinpointed radiation. Whereas back in the day, it was wide. I mean, your whole body they were able to cut it off just because, the radiation ray just shot at a certain distance. They could change how much it affected just by like focusing the camera, basically.
Sure.
But it was just basically a big square that the radiation shot down. And now it's like a knife. I mean, they can go in and just hit one little tiny lymph node and not affect anything else.
Wow.
And that's huge. That's huge.
That's awesome. It's amazing how quickly things advance. Cyberknife, that sounds like one of the Terminator's weapons or something. Cyberknife.
I mean, there's advancements constantly. So I wound up being diagnosed again at 40 with lymphoma. And the treatment from the 2 lymphomas was drastically different. There was no radiation because I wasn't a candidate for radiation.
Because of the previous damage?
Because the overexposure from when I was younger. It was strictly chemotherapy this time around. And I got a little sicker from that, but I made it through that pretty easily.
So did you, from the time when you were 19 and you first were diagnosed and you had your treatments, did you get back to a level of health where you could live a pretty normal life? Like, how long did that first bout last?
All in total, it was a little over a year from diagnosis to what they call your birthday.
Okay.
Actually, I'm sorry. Your birthday is 5 years after you're considered cancer-free. So it was a little over a year from diagnosis to being cancer-free. And in that year it was all the radiation treatment that I could handle, a little bit of chemotherapy, and planning. It was a good amount of waiting around, like, what's the next step? What's the next step? So I think that's why it took as long as it did. Lymphoma was to your point of how far has treatment come. When I was diagnosed at 19, I had lymphoma, and there's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Non-Hodgkin's was still considered deadly when I was 19 years old.
Okay.
When I was 40, I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's, and the doctor was like, "Don't worry about it. We got it.
This is great news.
Yeah.
This is the diagnosis we're hoping
you're
for."
Fine. Yeah. So the survival rate went from like 10% when I was 19 to like 95% when I was 40.
Wow.
So they obviously figured something out in that time. I mean, it is a long time span, 21 years, but still, for it to be something that when I was younger would have killed me, to thankfully getting it when I was 40, it was a breeze to get through when I was 40 years old.
Yeah,
so.
It's a weird perspective. So through most of your 20s, so you beat this, like, what were your 20s like? Talk about jobs and relationships again.
My 20s were crazy.
Yeah.
My 20s were crazy. Before I was diagnosed, I started dating Angie, my ex-wife. We hit it off pretty good. I think what kept us together as long as we did is she was the one that was there for me when I was sick, through the diagnosis and through the treatments. And, she helped me through. At that point was the roughest point in my life.
Sure.
We stayed together for I think we were together total like 16 years or something. Married for like 10 or 11. Had my only child with her. 20s were good. 20s were, when I turned 21, I couldn't drink because I was still sick from the chemo. So when I turned 22, we treated it like my 21st birthday.
Had some catching up to do.
Yeah. And it kind of gave me a kind of like I don't really give a shit about life kind of attitude. It just fueled the party. Yeah. Basically.
Fuck it.
It was like, you never know what could happen to you kind of. I drank a lot through my 20s, man. I boozed my 20s hard.
Ric Flair hard?
Yeah. I don't know if I'd go as far as Ric Flair. But I mean, I was at the bar 2 or 3 times a week, and I was never the kind of guy to go to the bar and have 1 or 2 beers. I'd go to the bar and I would close it.
Yep.
I'd go at 6 o'clock at night and come home at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'd go at 10 o'clock at night, come home at 3 o'clock in the morning. That was like, probably 2 or 3 nights a week. But I think my 20s were my most productive years. Landed a job at a small lumber yard, which wound up being a pretty good career for me. Worked my way up there as far as I could. And as soon as I realized there was nowhere else to go there, I started looking for another job at another place, wound up at another local yard as a manager, making pretty good money, really good money actually. And then the owner passed away, and the company kind of fell apart from there, because once the owner passed away, it was like 3 or 4 attorneys, and it was just a bunch of people. Yeah, a bunch of people started collecting paychecks from the place, and it was, wasn't long after that they started laying off the highest paid people. I was one of the highest paid people, so I wound up getting laid off. And then from there, I went to, I was working on motorcycles with a buddy of mine. So I was doing that during the day, and I was bouncing at a strip club at night, collecting unemployment.
Yeah.
So unemployment ran out, and then I ran right to, I wasn't going to even try and renew it. I knew that little bit of relaxation was all I needed. I needed to have a regular full-time job.
Idle time's not good for us.
No.
No.
Not at all.
I fantasize about like a week or 2 of not having to be anywhere or not having to set the alarm for 6 a.m. But like after that, it's the devil's playground.
Try it, and 2 days in, you're like, this isn't good.
Too much. I'm going to be dead by Friday.
Yeah.
That's funny. I could imagine. So we got to talk about bouncing at a strip club. I mean, that sounds like taxi cab confession type stuff.
Yeah, it was an eye opener, man. I've always been a big guy, so I didn't think, I wasn't afraid to fight. I didn't think I'd have a hard time. I didn't really have a hard time for most part. It got a little crazy here and there. There was a lot of nights that I worked by myself where it was supposed to be slow nights. Like Tuesdays and Wednesdays I worked by myself. And you'd walk in and just hope there wasn't a big altercation, because if it was a bunch of people, there wasn't anything I was going to do.
Sure.
My first couple of fights were just, one guy on one guy. It was easy enough. Grab the one guy, toss him aside, grab the other guy, throw him outside. And it was over. But every once in a while, there'd be that scary moment where you'd be like, wow, all 6 of those guys want to fight all 6 of those guys. Like, how do I defuse this situation?
Cyber knife.
Yeah. So I got lucky. I would mostly be able to just interject with a little humor. And get some people laughing and make some people realize that it wasn't serious enough to fight about. And I'd be like, look where you are, turn around, there's titties.
Yeah. Distraction.
Yeah. So
de-escalation. I bet that's super important in that job, right? You want to avoid having to touch anybody, as long as you can.
Yeah. The touching people, it's not like it used to be, in the 70s and 80s, I imagine being a bouncer was, even into the 90s, like I remember from going to clubs with my friends, if you got into a fight at a bar in New York City, you were getting the shit beat out of you.
Sure.
Period. That was it. But there was none of that. The owner was super scared of being sued.
Sure.
And he impressed the importance of that on all of us. It was like, under no circumstances do you hit anybody. Which, of course, when things would break out, he'd be the first one to
Right, he's dropping elbows.
Yeah.
Beer bottles, Roadhouse style.
Big old fat guy would just be shocked how fast he'd move. Like, whoa, what was that blur?
He's been waiting for that.
Yeah. So it was a challenge. It was scary at times, and it was fun at times. But most of the time, it really was just a waste of my time, because I was getting paid terrible. I was getting $125 a night in cash. I built up a lifestyle making the money I was making at the place I was laid off from. And I realized I was just trying to keep up with that lifestyle, and I was overworking myself to keep up with that lifestyle, to have the brand new truck and to have the motorcycle and to have everything that I wanted to have that was easy to have when I had the job that afforded it. Now I'm having to work 2 jobs. I'm missing a ton of time with my son because I worked Friday and Saturday nights, and I got my son every other weekend. So he'd stay with my mom Friday night. I'd hang out with him Saturday, barely, because I could barely stay awake. And then he'd go with my mom Saturday night, and then I would hang out with him for a little bit Sunday and then drop him back off to his mom.
Yeah.
And I did that for like 3 years, and I was like, I can't do it anymore. It just was too much, like the no sleep. And when I got the job at the next lumberyard, I stayed bouncing for a little while. The job I got was actually my first lumberyard that I worked at. I wound up going back there for a couple of months. He hired me as a part-time employee. Winter was coming, and he was talking about possibly laying me off, and then bit the bullet and applied at another lumberyard that I knew I would get the job at, Cukin Brothers. Here I am, 40-something years old, and I think I was 39. No, I was 40, because I was hired there January, and then the following October was when I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's. So now I'm sweating like it's my first year at this place. I'm diagnosed now. I just gotten my health benefits. I went and got a biopsy done, and the biopsy put me out of work for like 3 months. I'm like, there's no way this place is going to keep me. But they actually stuck by my side. It was a good company to work for. Made it through that, and got back to work and got my strength back, and just started busting ass like I do, and worked my way up the ladder pretty quick. Within 3 years, I was promoted up to dispatcher, making the money that I wanted to make, making the money that I was making at the previous place where I had the good lifestyle. But times change, so
sure,
good
inflation
lifestyle from 20 years ago doesn't really equate. So
nobody's immune to inflation. Take me back, just to jump around a little bit, but going back to marriage. Like, how old were you when you got married?
24.
24. So you were young, compared to this current generation for sure. And you guys were married, did you say 10 years, 12 years?
10.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell how was that in general? Were you guys happy? Where'd you meet? Did you honeymoon? Like, tell me about that.
Yeah, we were happy. We met in high school. My first day of 9th grade. A mutual friend introduced us. She just moved she moved to Belleville from Elizabeth, but was only in New Jersey for a year from Connecticut.
Okay.
So I met her my first day of school, freshman year. We just stayed acquaintances, just kind of like high in the hallway. Never really hung out, maybe hung out once or twice throughout high school. And then I ran back into her after high school, and we hung out and, hit it off and wound up dating. And then, like I said, I was diagnosed. She stuck with me through that. We got an apartment together after I was all healed up. And from there, it was just, well, we're living together. We may as well get engaged. And then, all right, we're engaged. We may as well get married. It was kind of just like a blur. Well, looking back now, it was a blur. 20-something years later, it's a blur now. But we got married at La Fere in Mountainside. We went to Punta Cana, Dominican Republic, for our honeymoon, which was awful. I had no interest. I don't like the beach.
Oh, no.
First day there, first couple hours there, I wound up with sun poisoning because I didn't understand that we were on the actual equator. Jumped in the pool with no shirt on, and 3 hours later, I was throwing up in the room from
sun poisoning.
Yeah. And then I discovered a drink called Mama Juana from the locals, and it healed me right up. It was amazing. Took a couple shots of it, and
it pickled your liver, but
yeah, it was incredible.
Bottom shelf agave.
But both of us agreed it was there was just nothing to do. Punta Cana wasn't built up yet. It was a pretty new resort, and it was more known for golfing.
Yeah,
which
neither of you golfed.
Neither one of us did, and it was pretty boring. There was really nothing for us to do. We did day trips and stuff, but they were horrible. It was like jump in the back of a truck and get driven around town. All the locals are yelling "El Diablo, El Diablo," Like, wow, we're gonna get back to the resort. We're gonna get our heads cut off.
We didn't need a liver. We didn't need a kidney.
So yeah, it wasn't that fun. We were both very thankful to get home.
Did she? So you guys are back. Did she work? What was she doing when you guys were married?
When we first got married, I don't remember what she was doing. She was working she just graduated college, maybe 2 years before we got married. So she wasn't doing anything that she went to college for.
Like a lot of us.
Kind of followed the job she had while she was in college, kind of let that lead her to her career, which she's doing great for herself now. She's an implementation consultant for ADP payroll.
Okay.
So she got into payroll through, I think it was Samsung she was working for, and then wound up getting the job with ADP. Just kind of rode that out.
Very cool. And then tell me about having your kid. Like how far into your marriage were you when you had your first child? What was that all about? How did that work?
5 years. We were married 5 years. We were trying for a while.
That's the best part of parenting, by the way.
Yeah, it wasn't. We were trying for a long time. She wound up getting pregnant very fast when we first decided we were going to have a kid. It was, it was a couple months later she was pregnant. I was like, we knocked that out of the box.
Mm-hmm.
But it wound up being ectopic. And she had to have a tube removed.
Oh, gosh.
Because the pregnancy was in the tube. So then it knocked our chances down 50%.
Sure.
So it took about 4 years. Because when we got back from our honeymoon, we immediately started trying. And then we had to take a little bit of a break. She had to heal up from the surgery from the ectopic. And then it took about 4 years before she finally got pregnant with Ethan.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you think any of your radiation, did that have any effect on your nuts or your sperm or anything?
I always blamed it.
Yeah.
I don't know if it actually did. I mean, the radiation didn't actually go down that far to my actual nutsack, but I find it hard to believe it didn't.
Sure. If they were like carpet bombing you in the room, yeah.
So I find it hard to believe that it didn't affect it. And I honestly thought that I wouldn't be able to have kids for a long time because of that, because of the radiation. And I thought if I did have a kid, it would be screwed up because of the radiation. Now Ethan turned out perfectly normal.
Healthy baby boy.
Yeah.
Nice. How old is he now?
19.
Wow. God, time flies.
Yeah.
So it is crazy. They're like, you're thinking about having a child, then you have it and your whole world changes. And now there's like an adult living in your house. You're like, holy crap.
Yeah. You don't even know how it happened. I mean, I remember his whole childhood. I remember him being every age. I remember him being an infant and a toddler in grammar school and middle school and high school. But when you look back on it, it just happened so fast that it's like, that's just like your life. You look back 20 years and you're like, man, how did I get here?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Memories are weird like that.
Uh-huh. And it only speeds up too. It's like time goes faster and faster.
The older you get, the faster it goes.
Yep.
Definitely.
Yep. Talk to me about his childhood. So when you think like, did he play sports? Were you there like coaching, watching? What did he do when he was younger?
He did like most kids do when they're very young. Soccer first, because it's like the first organized sport that you could put them in. So he did soccer for like 2 years. My only rule was if you start it, finish it.
Yeah, no
So
quitting.
if you say you want to play, we sign you up for the season. You're playing the season whether you like it or not.
Yep.
So he had to just finish whatever season he was in. He did baseball for, I think, 4 years. Started out with T-ball. No, it was 3 years. Started out with T-ball, then it was coach pitch, and then it was Little League. And the one season of Little League, that was it. He was done. He didn't want to play anymore. T-ball and coach pitch, I coached his team because there was no other parents that wanted to do it. So I kind of, not even was forced. I was just like, all right, no problem. I'll take care of it. Jumped in there and did it. It was a good time. It was good bonding with him. He was, I guess he was happy that I was there. His mother and me got divorced I think right in the middle of that. So it was extra time that he was getting with his dad. So.
Sure. Talk to me about that a little bit. I know I'm jumping around, but talk to me about the divorce, if you don't mind. Like, how would you describe the issues? Like, what were some of the things that led that marriage to go that way?
100% me. 100%. Just being young, and I can't even blame it on being young. I'm not trying to blame it on anything. I just was irresponsible. I was irresponsible. I was drinking way too much. I just didn't want to be held down. I wanted to just be able to do whatever the hell I wanted. And I didn't take having a family as serious as I should have, doing my own thing. And I think in a lot of relationships, we kind of just grew apart. We were just doing separate things. Like when we met, we had everything in common. We loved hanging out, smoking weed, and watching TV. And she grew up and I didn't.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. I mean, can't really say anything else. That's really what happened. So.
Yeah, it's funny. It's not funny. It's tragic, but it's interesting how a lot of marriages that wind up going that way. It's always the women that wind up maturing, right? Especially, I think parenthood changes them, biologically. I often say, like, if men were the ones that had to carry babies, like, we'd be extinct as a species. There's no way we would have survived. Yeah, first guy that had to birth a child. We're done. But yeah, a lot of guys. Yeah, let's take a quick break. We're back. We were talking about if men were the ones that had to birth children, we'd be extinct as a species.
Yeah. So let's go back to the divorce real quick.
Sure.
One thing I left out. When I say it's my fault, 100%, I think the introduction to motorcycling is what was the ultimate downfall.
Interesting.
From the time, I can't even remember, from the time I was a teenager, I wanted a motorcycle. And I think Andrew was smart enough to realize that I was in no way, shape, or form ready for one until I actually bought one. And the deal was, it was always an excuse why I couldn't get a motorcycle. Well, you're not going to get a motorcycle now because we have an apartment. Wound up being the last one. It was like, that was it. We're not having a motorcycle until we have a kid. We're not having a motorcycle till this. We're not having blah, blah, blah. So it wound up being, when we get a house, you can get a motorcycle. Okay, no problem. So, like I said, I got that new job, working at Viola Brothers, making good money. And all of a sudden, the house was a reality. So we shopped for a house. We found one, put a down payment on it, went to sign the paperwork for the house, got the keys, signed all the closing paperwork, got the keys, drove over to the house, unlocked the door, walked in, looked around. So it's going to take a while to get this. We luckily had a month left on our apartment that we paid already. So we had a month of free living. So the plan was stay in the apartment and do as much as I possibly could on the house before we moved in because it's just easier when it's empty.
Sure.
So I wound up gutting the whole entire first floor. But before I did that, I went to the Harley dealer and bought my first motorcycle, which basically sat in the garage until the house was in order and we were moved in. Now, I bought this motorcycle, wanted it my whole entire life. I had never even sat on a motorcycle.
Really?
Didn't know how to ride it. Had no clue. Got that thing home, looked at it in the garage. It was actually intimidated and a little scared. I just started riding it up and down the driveway and taught myself how to ride, riding up and down the driveway. I went and got my permit. I thought, I can't ride by myself. So I started riding a little bit with some coworkers. And then one of my coworkers was like, you really need to practice more. And I was like, I know, but nobody's ever available. He goes, dude, you're on a Harley. He said, just ride it. If you get pulled over by the cops, show them your permit, tell them that the group was riding too fast and you couldn't keep up.
You wanted to be safe, right?
You wanted to be safe, so you're heading home. And from there, it was just a complete addiction. Once I got comfortable, after a couple of weeks of doing that, it was a wrap. I never wanted to be home. I would be mad when it was raining and I was home.
Yeah.
I wanted to be on that thing constantly. Like the first year I had it, I rode it well into December. Like if it was 30 degrees, I was riding.
That's awesome.
So yeah, that took up all of my time.
So she got a little jealous of the bike.
Yeah, I mean, not that she got jealous of the bike. I just got, I don't know. Yeah, that was a big part of it though.
You should have got her a bike.
She didn't want anything to do with it. Mm-hmm. She didn't want to be on the back seat. She wanted nothing to do with it at all. That was probably the last excuse I needed to get out.
Sure.
So
did it end amicably? Were you guys like civil about the whole thing?
We're completely civil now. We're friends now. And when it first came about, when I first left, obviously, well, it's not obvious. It wasn't amicable at all. We fought a lot for a couple of years, and it was never anything about the kid. I was always with my son as much as I could possibly be. And it was probably more after I left than before, because before he was home with his mom, I was the dad and I could just, go whenever I wanted.
Yeah.
So when it came to like having responsibility for my son, I took that pretty serious. And visitation, everything we did was just between the two of us. We didn't use court for anything. Child support, visitation, the separation, the divorce, we did it all together. Just figured it out because neither one of us thought we should pay money.
Pay the lawyers. Yeah. They're the only ones that make out when you do that.
Exactly. So we just figured it out on our own and came up with what we came up with. We were both relatively happy, and nobody was really losing anything too big. So, it took a couple of years to get past the animosity of, not wanting to be with each other anymore. And then we had to co-parent, and we always took that serious. We tried as best we could to never fight in front of Ethan, and I think we did a pretty good job with that. And we wound up being pretty good friends. She's still somebody I call for advice here and there, and helps me through a lot of stuff at this point in my life. So
it's good. It's mature. It's healthy, and it's if you put your son kind of as your top priority, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, you're able to let a lot of things roll off your back when you think about the bigger picture of raising a child. Like, it baffles me when I see these people that get divorced, and the woman is like, "Well, you're never going to see your kid again." And it's like, why would you do that to the kid?
Yeah,
the kid's got nothing to do with it. It just makes no sense to me. Why would you do that to your kid? You're never going to see your father again. Oh, okay. What did I do? Yeah, that's what the kid's thinking.
Sure.
What the hell did I do?
Yep.
You guys didn't get along, and I got to suffer.
Yeah. They use their kids as pawns, like leverage against one another. So
yeah, it's awful. It's awful.
Terrible, right? And then I've seen situations where the father will tell one side of the story, the mother will tell one side of the story, and the kid's got to choose sides.
Yeah.
Toxic.
Unhealthy. Yeah, there's just so many different variants that could happen. Unfortunately, there's women that they marry the wrong guy, they have a couple kids with, and the guy just disappears, and he's not a father at all, not even a little bit, not even a phone call, a text message, nothing at all. He just falls off the face of the earth and just leaves 100% of the responsibility of the children on the mom. And I never ever wanted to be that. Never. Like, when I was thinking about leaving, and it never crossed my mind that I was going to 100% stay in my son's life. Like, I never even had to think about it, because I just knew.
Sure.
He's my son. I'm never going to give him up.
Yep. He'll be here till the day I die. Do you, like, when you had your son, do you look back at your parents, like your dad and your mom, and how they raised you? Do you feel like how you treated your son and interacted with him? Do you think there's direct connections to the way your parents were with you?
Absolutely. I think I had a great childhood. I think my parents did a great job. My son is the person he is because of the way he was raised by me and his mother. We basically shared the same ideals as how he should grow up, and he should grow up the way we grew up. I don't want to say mistakes, but I think where people go wrong in raising their kid is they focus too much on the bad that they had growing up, and they don't focus on the good and pass along the good. They just focus on the bad and try so hard to block the bad. They don't realize the damage they're doing to their kids. I mean, let's be honest, man. The generations behind us are pussies. They really are. They're whiny pussies, all of them. They don't get their way, they whine. They don't get what they want, and they throw a friggin' fit, and then they get what they want. So they win no matter what. Again, with the trophies. It's
participation trophies.
Yeah, it's
downfall.
It's absurd. It really is. I think that's what started this whole big downfall into this just masculinity being so forbidden that I think people just take it the wrong way. That masculinity is something that should be frowned upon, but masculinity is what gets us where we're going. I mean, there wouldn't be children if there wasn't masculinity.
Yeah.
If there was no masculinity, no man would try to sleep with a woman.
Yep.
And have a kid. So
end of civilization.
Yeah.
No, we both play our parts. We need men and women, right? And families need mothers and fathers. They each play different roles.
And I think the way my parents raised me was you don't quit. You don't give up because something gets hard. You see it through, you finish it. And if it's something you want to do, you continue to do it. If it's something you decide you don't want to do, you don't do it. And they gave me that freedom growing up as a kid. And I tried to give my son the same freedoms and teach him the same ideals that I was taught when I was growing up. Like, I grew up, my parents were blue collar, and I knew I was going to be blue collar because honestly, I didn't want anything else for myself. I wanted to live the simple life that my parents lived. And unfortunately, that simple life in our generation got way harder to do doing the sorts of things that our parents did. Like, you can't make the living my parents made having a mom and dad doing what they did. And they had it difficult, like as a kid, you're thinking like, this sucks and that sucks. But, as an adult, I look back on it, it was years and years. It was probably a good 8 years that my parents worked opposite schedules so that somebody was always around with the kids. My father worked from 12 o'clock at night until 8 o'clock in the morning. And my mother worked from 8 o'clock in the morning until 5 o'clock in the evening. So when my mom came home from work, my dad was sleeping, getting ready to go to work. And he was there during the day for us. When we went to school, it became a little easier for him. But I remember, like, before grammar school, before kindergarten, I remember waking up in the morning and my mom was either gone or getting ready to leave. And my dad was there and he watched us. And then my mom came home and we became hers. And then he went to work. And that must have been terribly hard on a relationship.
Sure.
To go, you have these 4 kids, you have all these responsibilities. They had to buy a house when Joe was born because there was 4 of us and an apartment just wouldn't work. And I imagine a 3-4 bedroom apartment at that point would just be, why even bother with that when we could have a house for $1,000 less,
Yep.
So they were working towards keeping their family together, and they sacrificed, man. They sacrificed each other to make a family. That's not lost on me at all, not even a little bit. I see it. I think the character it gave all of us siblings is character that's kind of disappearing now in these times.
Yeah, it's the grit and the hardship and not willing to quit when things get hard. It's a lot of things in our society just become disposable, right? It's like, oh, my phone's broken, I'll get a new one. Like back in the day, my car's broken, I'm going to repair it, I'm going to fix it. And marriages, I'm going to fix them, I'm going to work on them, I'm going to stick together. And it's again, things were simpler in some ways back then, but certainly a lot harder.
Yeah,
generations gotten soft. Are your parents still alive?
My father passed away 19 years ago. He was 53 years old.
Wow, young guy.
Yeah. My mom's still alive, 68, on the 6th of February.
Excellent. So, good health?
Yeah, pretty good health for a 68-year-old lady.
Shout out to Mary.
Yeah.
What
still gets it done?
Getting it done. What happened with your dad?
My dad had congestive heart failure. In his 30s and 40s, he started having some heart problems, late 30s, early 40s. I believe he had his first heart surgery when he was 42. I don't know why he waited so long. I had mine at 34.
Slacker.
And he was pretty much back to normal after the first heart surgery, but he was a little dumb. His heart surgery was it was from a birth defect, the congenital heart failure or congestive heart failure, one of the two. I don't remember which, but it was from a birth defect. He had an enlarged heart, and it caught up to him in his 40s because he was a big drinker and a smoker, and never took health serious. Which thanks, Dad. Thanks for passing that on. So he wound up having the heart surgery, and the doctors told him, you need this heart surgery because you're a smoker. And he got the heart surgery. He felt better and went right back to smoking. And unfortunately only gave him another 11 years because he just didn't take his health serious at all. He thought, oh, they fixed it, they'll fix it again.
Yeah.
So,
Do you feel like you just made a little like joke there? Do you think a lot of this stuff? Do you think a lot of it's genetic? Do you think it's environmental? Do you think it's choices that we make?
I think it's a very even mixture of all of those things. I think it's 100% environmental. I think we're being poisoned every angle, every way, every shape, every form. Everything you touch, everything you consume, everything you look at, everything you're programmed to want is designed to poison you in some way, shape, or form. I mean, from the smallest thing to the biggest thing. From what you eat, from what you're told is good for you one year, and then you're told it's terrible the following year. Decisions definitely make a big impact on your health and your well-being. I was a smoker for 20 something years. I saw what it did to my father, and I did it anyway. I mean, times were way different back then. I grew up with my parents smoking in the house, both of them.
Yeah.
And I started smoking at 13 years old because my mother decided to quit because she knew my father had to quit. So she figured, all right, I'm going to show you how easy it is. And she quit. So she made my father stop smoking in the house. And once that was gone, I craved it and I didn't know why. And I was like, well, fuck it. My buddy Rob, I was like, man, I feel like having a cigarette. He's like, let's go get a pack. And that was it. I was a smoker ever since, 13 years old. It was a couple of weeks after my 13th birthday. We went down to CVS and paid $1.10 for a pack of Marlboro Reds.
Things have changed.
Oh, yeah.
Another inflationary tale. It's funny because my experience has literally been the polar opposite. So you remember, but my dad passed away in the 80s, 87, from smoking, lung cancer. And he, from what I understand, he started smoking when he went to Vietnam. So he went to Vietnam and I guess like the stress, and then all your bros are smoking. So he picked it up and he came home at 18 or 19, whatever it was, just a smoker.
Yeah.
And I was 13 when he passed. So I just had the opposite reaction. I lost my dad. There's no way I'm going to smoke. I'm not going to do it because I see what it did to my family. I was whatever. But I have a younger sister that was impacted. My mom then had to do all the same thing that your parents did. Blue collar, as a nurse, but single parent trying to get through this. So anyway, my reaction to smoking was the opposite.
Well, I think if it impacted me at a younger age, like it did you, I think maybe my decisions would have been different. But, I was 29 by the time my dad passed away. I was already smoking for 16 years.
Yeah.
At 29, I was already smoking for 16 years. So I didn't see it as a bigger problem. And by the time I did see it as a bigger problem, I'm smoking for 16 years. How the hell do you quit?
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the most difficult things I ever did in my life was quit smoking.
Yeah.
It took a lot. It took a lot for me to finally quit. It took the heart surgery for me to finally quit.
Does your son smoke?
No, I don't think he ever will.
Do you think just because it's in this day and age, people are more conscious of that?
Yeah, I mean, look, when I was 13, I was walking around town smoking cigarettes, and I remember adults going, why are you smoking? And I didn't look at it from their point of view, but I think if I saw a 13-year-old kid smoking right now, it wouldn't even look right. I'd be like, what the hell are you doing? And I was a wise-ass little 13-year-old. They'd be like, why are you smoking? I'd be like, because I think I'm cool.
Yeah.
And blew it off and just continued on. But I think that's a big part of it. It's just so unacceptable now. When's the last time you saw a smoker walking down the street?
Yeah.
I don't remember that even. I don't even understand how you walk into 7-Eleven. There's still that wall of cigarettes behind. Who's buying them? Even online at Quick Check or 7-Eleven, it used to be everybody was in line to get a pack of cigarettes. Now it's 1 out of 15 people are buying cigarettes. It's just almost gone.
Yeah, they're all vaping now, though. Yeah. It's even in the grocery store. I was talking to one of my neighbors yesterday, and he's just hitting on his vape, and it's just become so socially acceptable, which I find to be weird. And then back to your point earlier, I know that we're going to find out in 5 years. Everybody's got popcorn lung or some fucking chemical.
I mean, it doesn't take a genius. When vaping first came about, I was like, so you don't want to light tobacco on fire and inhale it, but you're going to boil oil and inhale that.
Yeah. Seems to make sense.
Seems logical.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good. Enjoy that.
So we didn't talk about this at all yet, but you alluded to something that was sort of political leaning. Do you follow politics at all? Do you give a shit? Have you ever?
I mean, I haven't ever given a shit about politics as much as I do now, just because politics has changed so much in the past 15, 20 years. Like, politics has always controlled everything in our lives. It's just never been as obvious as it is now. And the fight between Republican and Democrat is really the only thing that we're handed on a daily basis. Has just been so public and out in the open. I wouldn't say I'm involved in politics. Concerned a little bit. Tough at, with my diagnosis now. I care, but at the same time, I don't give a shit.
You don't want to waste energy.
Yeah. That's really what it comes down to. Is I don't want to waste the energy, and a little part of me is like, what's one person really going to do? Which I know is like the opposite way to think for politics. But a big part of it is I'm not going to be around even for the next election. So why should I give a shit?
Yeah.
Really?
Well, trying to be the optimist and to push your logic a little bit, like, let's think about your son, right? And the world we're leaving our kids and all of that stuff. Like,
fuck him.
Fuck him. Fuck him. It'll build character, right?
I think he shares a little bit of my political point of views. I mean, there's very few things on the left that I agree with. I'm definitely more right. I wouldn't say like far right. I don't know. The categories they've given political supporters in the past couple of years is just absurd.
It's so stupid.
It really is. So I mean, if you go back 20 years, I'm more of a Democrat with a little bit of Republican belief. But now there's like nothing Democratic I'm interested in anymore.
It's changed so much, right? Like JFK would be like a Republican today, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, the beliefs have flip-flopped almost completely. Yeah, I'm definitely more right than left. I think I'm all the way right. I don't know.
What do you think? Like, what are some of the most important issues to you? Like, what do you care about from a political perspective?
Nothing that they're fighting about.
Yeah,
like this whole sexual orientation thing has become such a big spotlight on politics. I just think anything involving like what people do on a day-to-day basis with themselves has absolutely nothing to do with politics. Like, I don't think the president of the United States should be worried about how I identify. It really, like, get a grip, man. Figure out the fucking financial situation we're in.
Yeah.
You're worried about, like, if Susie wants to be Samuel, who gives a shit? Who cares? Like, and I don't know where the push is coming from. It's really disturbing how little politics involves what politics should involve anymore, and how much it's getting into our personal lives. That's what bothers me about it, is that they're getting so personal with everybody. It's, where does it stop? And at this point, I don't see it stopping until they have complete control over you. And that's what I worry about handing down to my kid. Like, what's he not going to be able to do?
Sure, the freedom is taken away. Yep.
Yeah, what's he not going to be able to do that we took for granted as kids or as young adults, as 20-something-year-olds? What kind of policies are going to go into place that's going to give him a difficult time? And that's something that I thought about before we even had a kid. When we first got married, like I explained it before, that we got married and we were trying immediately. That wasn't really immediately. There was a long discussion, like over a year-long discussion about whether or not we wanted to bring a kid into this world, because we saw the way it was going back then already. And then her want to be a mother just kind of took charge, and it was like, okay, you want to be a mother? And I want to be a dad. Let's just do it. But I think the concerns we had back then are exactly what we didn't want them to be now. I don't regret having a kid, but I'm not happy with the world I brought him into and what it's going to be when I'm gone and I'm not here to watch out for him.
Sometimes they call us conspiracy theorists, but I could say it's more of a fortune teller, right? Yeah. You're like predicting the future. Yeah. This is what's happening.
Yeah.
I know for me, like, becoming a father is, and I hope for most parents, it's life-changing. Like, life will never be the same again from the time that child's brought into the world. And for me, I feel like this added level of responsibility on my shoulders.
Yeah.
But then the coolest stuff is like, it's just like a new degree of love. Like, oh my God, like I thought I loved my wife, which I do, but like the love you have for a child is incredible.
So different. There's nothing nothing equivalent to it.
No.
You thought you loved your mom, you thought you loved your wife, you thought you loved your brother, your sister. It's so different, and it's a level of responsibility and care that you can't experience in any other way.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. You have to experience it. You can't like talk to somebody that doesn't have children. They're never going to understand.
No. No, they'll never get it.
Yeah. And then it's funny. We have 2 girls, and we had our second child, and they still like, who do you like better, Dad? I'm like, look, you don't when you have children. Like for me, I don't have to divide my love, right? It's not like, oh, I have this big pie of love, and you get half and you get half. But it's like your heart grows, right? Yeah. It's like the Grinch, right? My heart grows. I've got this extra kid. It's cool and it's scary. But going back to what you were talking about earlier, growing up, like the hardships, the struggles made you the person you are. And I think like that's why I think it's going to be okay. Like even if it's harder for our kids,
they'll figure it out.
That's okay. Yeah, they will figure it out.
Yeah. They'll figure it out like we figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you think about how things are now and think about how they were when we were kids, even before we were even paying attention to anything, I mean, obviously things were easier back then because we were kids. We didn't have any responsibility. But if we were adults back then, I think the struggle would be exactly the same. It would be exactly the same. We just, as humans, were able to evolve. And as things change, we change to accommodate things. I think it should be the opposite, but that's life. We change to accommodate what's happening around us. And it's all relative. It's all relative. My struggle is no worse than my parents' struggle was, which is no worse than their parents' struggle was, which is no worse than their parents' struggle was.
Sure.
It's just different atmospheres, different types of struggle, but it's all the same.
Different perspectives. Yeah. Kids or families would have like 10 kids knowing that half of them were going to die, right?
Yeah.
Or they'd need them.
That's why they had 10 kids. Yeah. They wanted 4 good ones.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody's got to work the farm.
Yeah.
No, we definitely have lots of luxury problems in today's society.
Yeah, I think like with the struggle being the same, I think that the toughness falling away is going to make the struggle worse for people. It is all relative. There are factors, and I think one of the big factors is just going to be that the level of just overall human toughness has just gone down so much, man. Like, God, I can't remember another time where words affected people so deeply.
I know.
It's just crazy to me.
I know.
Like, there's people online crying their eyes out that they were misgendered. And look, I'm not judging you. I hate to dive into this gender thing, but you see yourself one way. You can't expect a complete stranger to know everything about you and know your struggle. And I don't know where that came from, but the fact that that is happening right now speaks a lot about how that this generation was raised and the entitlement that this generation feels. That they should be able to walk down the street looking fully like a woman and get upset when they're not called a man.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just designed to be confusing on purpose, and I don't understand it.
So here's my latest conspiracy on this, because I've thought about this a lot. And I just watched MK Ultra.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So like in the 60s, 70s, the CIA was doing LSD experiments on people.
They were just bombing people with LSD and not telling them.
Yeah. And then like, let's see what happens, right? Let's see, like, go crazy.
Let's follow Jeff.
Yeah.
Jeff just took 69 hits of LSD number 1. Let's follow him to the pool.
See what happens. Yeah. So I think this is perhaps a CIA operative, which is either being done through pharma, right? Big pharma is feeding stuff, or the food lobby, food industry.
I think it's a combination of both.
And then social media. So it's like physically there's some hormone changes in what we're eating, our food supply and our drugs. And then mentally with social media trying to push this transgender thing. And the why? I think it's the overlords, like what's this, Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum. They want to control. You said that earlier. They want total dominance and control. So if they can get us divided as people fighting with each other, we're kind of ignoring those big problems.
Easier to control.
Yeah. And then if we if there's transgender people, they're sterilizing. Let's say 1/10 of people identify as trans. They're sterilizing 10% of our population. So they're, Bill Gates is trying to reduce population. So
I think a lot of it's population.
So again, that's far-fetched, probably conspiracy theory. But again, 10 years, if we were to do a follow-up, it would be interesting to see how much of that stuff.
Yeah.
You know what is scary, and this is a total tangent, but if you go to the stock market and look up pretty much any company, the top 3 owners are going to be BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. Like almost every single company. So it's like, I think George Carlin did that. Like the real owners, want you, and you ain't in that owning class. But they just want to consolidate power. It's going to be like the top 1% of 1% that has everything, and we will own nothing, and we will be happy.
And I don't understand how that benefits anyone, really. Even like the elite, the people that don't have to ever worry about where their next meal is coming from. Honestly, those people don't even have to worry about where their next Bentley is coming from.
Right.
But like, I just don't see. Maybe because I'm not there, but I don't see how that benefits even that group of people to have this much chaos in the world. And I think that's like the chaos is what gets them control, right? Yeah. So it doesn't, in my head, it doesn't make sense to abuse such a large group of people so that small little group could be happy. Just doesn't make sense to me.
Power. And they think they know what's right. So they think they know what's best for how you should be living your life, what you should be able to eat.
They've never lived a life like ours.
No. It's like polar opposite. It's like a Martian existence compared to what most people live. Jen loves going down these rabbit holes too. So her latest conspiracy on the immigration at the border, I think you and I were shooting the shit about that recently. So she goes, okay, here's my conspiracy. So over the next 2 years,
I love hearing that startup, by the way. Oh, okay, here's my conspiracy. I get right in.
Oh,
okay,
it's so nuts. I'm like, all right, lay it on me. Okay, so the next 2 years, there's trillions of dollars of commercial real estate debt that's coming due. And it's all these properties are going to be underwater. So like, let's say you've got a $500 million loan, that building's only worth $100 million. So Jen thinks the government's going to come in and seize all of those properties. And they're going to basically do another bank bailout. So let's say the banks had, again, $2 trillion on their balance sheet. The banks aren't going to freak out because the government's giving them their money back. Oh, here's your $2 trillion. Don't worry about it. Government now owns these properties, and they're going to take all these migrants that are now living in hotels and motels and schools and everything, and they're just going to move them into free government affordable housing.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. Man, that's a deep hole to dig. I think that the migrants that are coming in, with the exception of the handful that are really bad people that are just trying to get out of whatever situation they created for themselves, and then they come here and create the same situation, which is stupid, the rapists and the murderers and just the thieves and just the bad people that are trying to get out of whatever country that they're in, is one thing. That's a total separate issue. I think the military-aged males that are coming from all over the world into this country is something that nobody's paying enough attention to. There's a group of people that are, mostly ex-military, are the ones that are looking at it as I'm looking at it. The way I think it should be looked at is this is an invasion, and it started, and the war doesn't start until the invasion's complete.
Sure.
So if there's an invasion happening under our noses, which I don't think it's under our noses, I think everybody's fully aware that it's an invasion, and it's disguised as this big savior. We're saving all these people. They need to come to this country. Honestly, dude, what's great about America right now? I've never lived in another country, but what is so great about the shape of this country right now that all these people need to be here?
Well, it's going back to something you said earlier. It's all relative, right? It's all about perspective. So let's say you're a mom, you're living in Guatemala, you got 2 kids, your husband was murdered by MS-13, your daughter got raped on the way to school the other day, your son gets the shit kicked out of him. You have a little shop, and they come and they collect their, whatever, you owe me 25% of your money every week.
Yeah.
And you're like, I could stay in Guatemala and I could live like this, or I can go to America. America might not be perfect, but it's better than this current situation. So it's like, where they're coming from.
That situation I support.
Yeah, me too.
I support that 100%.
Me too. I'd like to fast track that sort
Absolutely.
of stuff. But I get it. I don't blame them for wanting it. And America, from their perspectives, from the immigrants, they still have the hope that there's an opportunity for a better life.
Well, that's what immigration in America was founded on.
Sure.
The struggles of other countries and escaping that and coming in the right way, getting your citizenship, becoming a citizen. But it's just become so unfair in recent years that the overflow, there's no way they can all keep it all legal. And, there's just so many plans in place for immigrants to succeed before Americans do. That is what is really ripping this country apart. Sure. Because everybody wants opportunity. And just because you were born here, you should have less opportunity than somebody that wasn't. That's where they lose me. The veterans in the streets, the homeless Americans that were born and raised here, that they're turning a blind eye to, is what really, you're a veteran of the country that you grew up in because you had pride enough in your country that you thought, I'll give my life up for this country. I'll give my life up for this country. You come home after doing that. You're mentally scrambled. You have no idea because the things they expect you to do at war are things you never thought you'd have to do in your life. You're having a hard time handling it. And the country that you loved and fought for goes, nah, go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
Go fuck yourself. You can stay on the streets. The suicide rate, I think, is still at 21 people per day.
Sure.
Of veterans that kill themselves, that have no other option. Like, we've had some experience with suicide with close friends of ours. To be at the point of desperation where you think that the world is better off without you breathing in it and you take your own life has to be a point that I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy.
Of course.
And to have that many people that their only fault was that they loved their country enough to fight for it, a day killing themselves is a fucking disgrace. And there's just not enough being done about that to warrant this flood of immigration.
Sure. Yeah.
If it's like take care of your own before you start pointing out problems elsewhere. So why would we take on these problems of the world when our problems are so huge? Is it just to deflect, like everybody loves to do? Like, I'm not stupid, you're stupid.
Yeah.
You're dumber than me. So is it that, or is it that they think the problem is just too big, they can't handle it? I don't know. But I think the overlooking of all of the problems in our infrastructure, in our government, in our regular lives on a daily basis, the overlooking of that and just going, no, we're fine. We're going to bring in 100,000 more people today and 100,000 more tomorrow. I would think that just makes the problem 3-4 times as bad, because now you have this on top of that, on top of that, on top of that, on top of that. And then the real problems just get brushed under the rug.
And it's a credit card bill that we will never pay.
Never.
Your kids, our great-great-grandkids will never be able to pay all of that.
No.
Yeah, it's such a deep topic, the veterans and the suicides, and I'm generally like libertarian-ish. Like, I would prefer we don't send a ton of kids off to fight some other bullshit wars in other countries. Like, that's my first choice. Like, how about don't get involved in that? Don't send all these kids to get fucked up. But you're absolutely right. If and when they do that, we owe it to them and their families, to give them the support they need.
Name a war that directly threatened the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Directly threatened the United States. That wasn't some sort of government spice up to make us go, oh yeah, we should fuck them up.
Yeah, Pearl Harbor,
maybe. Maybe.
Probably.
And now you find out years later that Pearl Harbor could have easily been prevented.
Yeah.
Easily been prevented by all the warning signs. And they were like, no, let it happen. Otherwise we can't get involved.
Yeah.
So name a war that really needed it. Vietnam was a disaster.
Oh,
it was a disaster.
And
destroyed
bullshit.
So many lives. And it was a freaking disaster.
Yeah.
So they just want like disposable heroes. You know? Get these guys in there, let them do what they have to do.
Yeah, the government's just fucked up.
Yeah.
It's broken.
Yeah, it's been broken for a very long time. I think social media and the internet has brought it more to the forefront for us because things are just more readily available at the fingertip to access, and it's not good right now.
No, and I think social media has pros and cons, right? I think it's opened way more people's eyes to shit that they may have been unaware of. If you were just watching CNN and NBC, and you're just getting spoon-fed this propaganda, and that's all you ever looked at. Social media has opened people's eyes to other media, right? Other perspectives, which I think that's good. But yeah, it's fucked up a lot of kids. And even kids get addicted, they get cyberbullied, and kids wind up killing themselves. Which is just tragic. Anyway, that was fun. I don't know how we went down that hole.
Yeah.
Talk to me about your experience with money and economics. I think you've already touched on some of the work ethic stuff, which personally I think that's one of the most important things. You could take somebody who's not the smartest, but it's going to out hustle you and all of that stuff. But what have you learned? What mistakes have you made? What have you done right as far as finance and money and stuff like that in your life?
What I've done right, I think, is I don't know that my father's actually ever said these words to me, but one of the lessons I learned from my dad is there's absolutely no substitute for hard work. There's nothing that's going to get past hard work. Whether I found that in my work experience, hard work will get you wherever you want to go as long as you're patient. Bullshit will get you there a lot faster, but it won't keep you there.
Sure.
I've seen plenty of people bullshit their way right past me, and you smile and wave, and you just wait your turn. I think some of the financially mistakes I've made is just overspending. Period. Credit is such a available force in this country, and you're just so pushed towards it. Just get a credit card. Get a credit card. I've been underwater on credit cards plenty of times, and I've always gotten myself out of it. But I wouldn't be able to get myself out of it without the hard work. And I wouldn't even be able to get myself into that position without the hard work. You're working hard, and you hit a point where you're like, shit, I'm working hard, and I got nothing to show for it. Let me get a credit card.
Yeah.
Let me get a couple of those things that I think I deserve. Or, let me get a couple of those things that I need and I can't afford right now. But I think just not having such a tight belt financially is probably my biggest mistake that I've made my entire life. Finally, in my 40s, got a little bit of a hold on it and figured it out a little bit, how to not overspend and how to stay within my limits. It's a big machine that pushes it on a daily basis. It's in your face constantly to want more, and commercials. And everything, want more. So it's hard to balance, but living within your means is a lot more difficult than people give you credit for rather. Living within your means is very important, and I think it's just I don't think many people do it.
Yeah. There's a lot of social pressure to keep up with the Joneses, or the newest Tesla, or the newest iPhone, or the newest this, and all my friends have it. And
you talked earlier about this disposable age that we're in, and I think we're at the point now where even cars are disposable.
Sure.
You're not expected to keep a car more than a lease term.
Yeah.
And then what do they do with them? And they oversell them to the next guy, to the poor guy that can't afford it at an interest rate he can barely afford. It's just it's a cycle that's not easy to get out of, but very easy to get into.
Yeah. It's our whole society. A big part of our economy is consumer based. It's if we all just said, we're going to tighten our belts and live below our means, we'd probably, bankrupt the economy, right? Way less tax dollars.
Oh yeah.
I think that's a big missing piece of our education system with kids. And we're in Denville now. So I went maybe it was last year. They had a meeting. It was a lot, actually. It was 3 2-hour meetings where they were doing the planning for the next 5 years, what we think as parents. They had all the stakeholders, teachers, parents, administrators, and what we wanted out of the school's curriculum. And one of the things I was standing up and preaching and screaming is financial literacy. I'm we're teaching kids by the way, my kids are struggling with algebra and geometry and all that crap. I'm unless you're going to be an 8th grade math teacher, you're never going to need to do this ever again. I don't know why they're teaching you this shit. But they should teach you how to invest, how to do your taxes, how to earn more than you spend, earn.
They don't even teach you how to write your signature
anymore.
Yeah. They stopped teaching cursive. Because in the future, they see you just not needing it because everything's going to be electronic. But I agree. The basics of economics is something that it's an elective. You could take an economics class, but it's an elective. It's not required. And
all 4 years of high school, college requirements.
I'm sure that's by design.
Of course.
They don't want you
to learn. They want you uneducated.
Yeah, they don't want you to learn the in and outs of how money works.
Yeah.
They just want you to spend as much of it as you possibly can and then more.
And then while you're in debt, there's a sense of control over you. So you don't have freedom when you're in debt, right? You're like a victim to that. Right. I love, I don't know if you ever looked at
slavery, man.
Yeah,
that's slavery.
It is.
If you're in debt, there's no way you can quit your job. If you're comfortable and you have a couple bucks in the bank and your boss is a dick, you need to tell him to go fuck himself and get yourself another job and be on the shelf for a couple of months until you figure it out. Not when you're in debt. You're stuck.
No, you're paying rent, and then you've got to start prioritizing your bills. Okay, well, this will get me kicked out on the street. This will, be a nice meal out. You have to start prioritizing where you're spending money. Yeah, it's very interesting. I think it's with my kids. Again, I'm just trying like 2 kids at a time, right? I'm not going to fix the world or the system, but like I have them. They have stock accounts, trading accounts, and like let's say Sarah gives them $100 for their birthday or something. I say, all right. You have a couple bucks to go waste at Starbucks or Playa Bowls or something, but we're taking 50, we're putting it in your account, and then we'll sit down and I let them pick the companies they're going to buy. So Tanner, what did she just buy? She just bought some Starbucks stock. I think Hayden did Michael's, the craft store, when that used to be publicly traded. It's now private equity. But what else did they do there? Oh, and TJ Maxx. She did great. She's like 45% up on TJ Maxx. Nice. That was her idea. She goes, Dad, all the kids are getting backpacks and school clothes and everything. And I think it's going to be a good time to buy it. I said, okay, let's go. So I have them a little interested, and they'll come down after school like, Dad, how much money did I make today? I didn't go to work, but my money went to work. I'm like, good. Like that's how you should be thinking. And they're 11 and 13. So if I can get it early,
even if it's just like a hobby with Dad, it gets them interested.
Yeah, gets them paying attention. I try to have them earn money to get crap, and it's simple shit like empty the dishwasher. I'll give you $3 at laundry. I'm probably overpaying them. Basket of laundry, $5, but it's the principle, right? Like if you do work, you get money. Yeah. Right? It's not you don't just get money.
What everything's based on.
Yes.
So teaching them young is smart.
No entitlements. There's no entitlements in this house. It's funny. My wife and I come from pretty different families, right? I grew up in Belleville, pretty much single parent. Like we had to be frugal, and that's what I knew. And to your point, I had a great childhood. Like I didn't want for anything that I couldn't have.
Me either.
But my wife, and again, her family just very successful, and they worked very, very hard, and they grew up with way more affluence than we did. So she is way more carefree with spending, and then where I'm like super frugal, like I want to save and then potentially buy something, like where she'll put stuff on credit and everything. I'm like, oh, this makes me uncomfortable. It's just not how I'm wired. That's probably some of our biggest disagreements sometimes.
Yeah, we really did have it good as kids. Man, I know. Like we talked about, like our parents being frugal, and obviously my parents had to be. They had 4 kids. But if you think about our hobbies, like a complete skateboard when we were younger was $100.
Yeah,
and for our parents to be able to get us those, I mean, how many decks did you go through?
Oh, yeah.
I used to have to trick my mom. She'd bring me to Clifton Speed Shop for like clothes for school, and I'd be like, "Well, I could use a new deck."
I know.
My mom. So I remember we went one time to get some skids and some Vision streetwear sneakers, and my mom saw a deck hanging, and it was Matt Hensley, the double kick, and I wanted it so bad. And my mom thought it said Henley, and she was a big Don Henley. So she was like, "I'll buy you that. It's Henley." I was like, "Sweet,
excellent."
Got it home. She saw the S. She was like, "You little fucker.
You son of a bitch!" Right? This isn't the Eagles. That's Tony Hawk. That's not an eagle. That's so funny. Oh man, how about so just thinking like broader topics, like if you were to give yourself, like your 18-year-old self, some advice, or actually even use your son as a good example, like some life lessons for your son, like what are some big important things you'd love to get into his brain? Like what are some things you'd share with your younger self?
To get into his brain, sharing your feelings and your thoughts. I know it sounds kind of fruity.
No, it's good. But communication, baby.
I was not a big communicator because I think because of the way I grew up. I grew up with a couple of siblings, and communicating what you wanted or what you needed wasn't really something we did. It was just you got what you got, and that was it. So sharing your feelings, like my parents were overloaded. I was like probably the least problem child out of the 4 of us as far as like needing attention. I just kind of laid low. I just held everything in, and I see Ethan doing that. at this point. That's the biggest thing I press on him right now is sharing and getting your feelings out and trying to instill some work ethic in him. I don't really know at this point how to do that. Like I've tried my whole life with him growing up when I was working on motorcycles. I'd bring him with me and I would try and show him. He just never really had an interest in anything I was doing. And I guess the difference between me growing up and him growing up, it didn't fucking matter if I showed an interest in what my dad was doing. I was helping him.
Yeah.
You hold that fucking
I don't care
flashlight.
if you want to do this or not.
Yeah. I didn't ask you.
Stop shaking it.
Yeah. I didn't ask if you wanted to do this. I was telling you, you're doing it. I need your help. I guess I didn't push that as hard enough on him as, and again, like I don't have regrets about the way my father treated me at all. I think he made me the person I am. You know, one of the conversations I had with my dad, like I think people know when they're going to go. And a couple weeks before my dad passed away, we were in his garage. He had this, 3-car garage in the backyard. It was a 5-car garage, but 3 of them were his workshop. And we were hanging out in the workshop talking. He was getting he got a little sentimental in his later years. He would just pull conversations out that you didn't expect from him. Knowing him growing up, you didn't expect him to ask some of the questions he asked. And he just looked at me. We were talking. He goes, was I a good dad? And my response was, what do you mean was? He goes, you know what I mean. Was I a good dad growing up? And, the first thing I thought of, I said, look at me. He goes, what do you mean? I said, look at me. I'm 24 years old. What do you think? I was already married at the point. I was living with my ex-wife at the time, and I was driving what I wanted to drive, and we were both doing pretty good. We both had pretty nice cars, and we didn't really we weren't struggling by any means. We were living pretty comfortably. And he shrugged his shoulders and he goes, I guess so. And I said, you were a great dad. You were the best. Like, I didn't always like what you did. I didn't always like the way you treated me, or I didn't always like the way you forced me to help. But if you didn't impress that stuff upon me when I was younger, I wouldn't be the person I am. I said, if you changed anything at all when I was younger, I wouldn't be the person I am. And if you're happy with who I am, then there's your answer. You were what you needed to be. And that was it. So,
do you remember any of the other stuff he would bring up, like big topic wise, towards the end of his life?
Nah, he was just an idiot.
Yeah.
He was, my whole life growing up with him was, it was like a work relationship kind of.
Professional.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there wasn't my dad wasn't like the touching moment kind of guy. So that's why that took me so off guard.
I remember it's so crazy. Like you remember these little moments, which in the grand scheme were kind of insignificant, but we knew my dad was dying. Like I remember he was diagnosed in July and he died in December. So we had 6 months knowing that he was sick. And
you remember that from 13, huh?
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. It was why I think it was life-changing. Life will never be the same for them. So it was like weeks before he died, and I must have been crying upstairs, and he came up, and I don't remember the whole conversation, but I remember him asking, what was wrong, and I told him I was scared. I'm scared, and I remember he said, I'm scared too, and I was like, oh my God, like that's the first time in my life I ever thought my dad was vulnerable enough to be. And the fact that he was afraid of it. Yeah,
because when you're that young, you think your dad's a superhero.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
But it's funny because it's a similar thing. It's like they're human, right? They're human beings.
Yeah.
And I generally think, like we were talking about even immigrants, like most people are good, right? Most people are good. Most parents are good. Most parents do the best they can with what they got. And, what they got might be fucked up, right? Their parents might have been fucked and so forth.
Yeah,
so
most
on.
people want to be good.
Yeah, most people want to be good parents and try their best. Interesting. Tell me more. So currently, talk to me a little bit if you want to go down this path, but like your current diagnosis, how you're feeling, how you're thinking about some of those like mortality things. And
I'm okay. I'm okay with it. Like, everybody's very surprised when they hear me talk. Like my diagnosis is stage 4 esophagus cancer, which has a survival rate of like 3%. I know at this point I'm 100% going to die. It's going to be absolutely within the next year, more than likely within the next like 3 to 6 months. I'm at peace with it. I'm okay with it. There's nothing there's nothing worse than struggling against something that's not beatable. I've been down the cancer road a couple other times, so I guess that was in preparation for this. I've had major surgery before, which is scary in itself. And, again, that was probably in preparation for this. I think the hardest part about it is the people I'm leaving behind. Everybody, from you, childhood friend to my girlfriend for the last 4 years, to my ex-wife, to my son, to my mom, to my siblings. Everybody handles it a different way, but I have my set thought about it, and it's kind of hard to put myself in their shoes because I'm in mine. So the way I act and the way I talk about it sometimes upsets people because they can't understand why I'm so okay with it. I explain it with, how else should I be? Would you want me to be struggling with it? And of course it's always, no. All right, so then shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I've made my peace.
I think the hardest part is my son, because I knew, and too, when you lose your dad, it's difficult, man. I was lucky to be 29 when I lost my dad, and it still put me off the rails, man. I didn't handle it well at all. My dad was a huge, huge part of my life, and he was just the fucking greatest, always. And no, he was like a legend, even like with my friends. Like, you nicknamed him Big S, and I remember when you did that, and he, a couple of days later, said to my mom, I don't understand. My mom's like, what? Well, I don't have a big ass. And these kids keep calling me Big Ass. She goes, Steve, they're calling you Big S. Big S for your name, Steve. And he's like, oh, all right, that's all right then.
I'll take a big ass. Not big ass, though.
But he was just a huge part of my life. And that void is just, you don't realize first, you don't realize that you can't fill voids like that. There's nothing that'll fill it. It's just, that's it. That's life now. It's different. It might suck a little bit more. They're not coming back. Replacing them is impossible. People have tons of addictions, food, alcohol, drugs. I tried them all to fill that void, with the exception of drugs. I mean, basically just marijuana, but I drank like a fish. It was easy to just, I didn't use the excuse of my dad, but looking back on it, that's what propelled it to the limit that I took it to. And that's probably the most difficult thing, is I don't want to see my son go through what I went through and struggle with it, because I didn't know how to voice it. I didn't know how to get it off my chest. I didn't know how to get rid of the pain of losing my dad. And it breaks my heart to think that my son's going to have to do the same thing. And I'm not going to be there to help him. That's tough. That's tough. But I can think about everybody in my life and think, shit, I'm not going to be there to help them through it. But, obviously, if you're passing away, you're not going to be there to help anybody. So that's my biggest worry. My biggest worry is how everybody's going to handle it, how people are going to deal with it. And hopefully it doesn't cause any major damage.
Have you been sitting down with Ethan and having pretty straight conversations with him?
Yeah. I've from diagnosis to now, I've kept him firmly in the loop. He was 18 when I was diagnosed. So right from the beginning, it was like, he's an adult. I'm not going to keep it from him. I kept it from him to the point where I wanted to know all the facts before I talked to him about it. I didn't want to give him scenarios.
Sure. He plays them out in his head. Yeah. Worst case scenario. Right. Yeah.
Could be this, could be that, could be this, could be that. So I just waited until I knew exactly what I was talking about before I talked to him. So he was, a couple of days or a week behind other people getting news. But I was just careful in the way I presented it to him. But he knows, he's starting to ask some tough questions. Like, he texted me yesterday and said, it's a simple question, but how do you answer it when you're in my shoes? Like, why do people have to get cancer? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know why I had it 3 times. I don't know why so many people in so many different lives have died from it. But it's something that's out there. It's nothing. It's nothing we can stop. government won't let us.
Too much money in it.
Yep.
Too much money keeping us sick.
Yeah. Yeah, I think about that a lot too. Like, how many lives would be turned upside down if cancer was curable by a pill tomorrow? It'd be millions and millions.
I think it's okay. I love your answer to him. I don't know. I've like, the older I get, the more comfortable I get with that as an answer. Like, it's very freeing to say, I don't know, honey.
Yeah.
And then asking them to think, what do you think?
I agree.
What do you think? Like,
Opening the conversation is the biggest part. If they ask a question you don't know the answer to and you talk it out with them, I think it helps you both understand. You're going to leave the conversation, you and your kid, with maybe not a better understanding of the question itself, but definitely a better understanding of each other and how your mind works and how their mind works and, just how they're feeling in general. Because as you're asking these questions, you're getting feelings, you're getting emotions from them. And I think it just helps you understand where they are in general with dealing with the situation. So,
yeah, it's so funny you should say that. Like, that's part of why I wanted to even do this podcast, is a little bit like that. Like, think of it like legacy, right?
Yeah.
After I'm gone, like, I want my kids to, if they're interested, like, how did dad think about things? So even now I tell them, like, if you want to know how dad views stuff, like, look at all the books I've read. So, like, here's books. Like, if you want to know, like, where I get bits and pieces of the way I look at things, there's that. But, something like this could be the same thing, like some insights into how we think about things.
And I want to be open with him as much as I possibly can, because I don't want him to, I don't want him to think like, oh shit, I should have asked my dad this. I should have asked my dad that. I wish I had the courage to ask my dad, more that than anything else.
Yeah.
I don't want him to ever think like he can't ask me something because he's afraid of the answer.
Yep.
And he's not. He asks whatever he wants, and he's always been that way. And I love that.
Anything is on the table with our kids and Jen. Like, there's certain things I don't want to explain to them quite yet. And I'm like, how do I explain that and, like, keep it at their age level? But and you want them to feel comfortable coming to us to ask that stuff, right? I don't want their friends giving them guidance on shit like this. Like, talk to me about anything. It's fine.
Yeah, and even if you have to use, like, what you think their friends would say. Like, I'll do that all the time. Ethan will ask me a question. I'm like, well, your friends will probably tell you this. But this is actually how it is, And using humor a lot, too. That's always been my deflection. Humor's always been my deflection. So
it's a great tool.
I've had plenty of jokes about dying for, months and months, and Lauren doesn't really like.
She doesn't appreciate them.
No. I'd say you've gotten used to them now at this point. My jokes. Yeah.
Humor is part of his wellness plan, Lauren.
It is. So I appreciate it.
I have to see if I can find this meme for you, but one of my best friends, Ron, has this incredibly rare form of eye cancer. And thankfully, they feel like they've caught it early, and he had a whole bunch of treatments and this, that, and the other thing. But the day after he told me, I sent him a meme, and it's this guy with an eye patch, and he's at the Wheel of Fortune. He goes, "Can I buy an eye?" I sent it to him. So he's like, "You're a sick motherfucker." I was like, I love you, bro. I think sometimes that's like, look, another truth is none of us are getting off this rock alive.
No.
We're all going to, that's probably one of the most beautiful parts of human existence, is we're all in this together, right?
Yep.
We're all dying at one point.
I'm not scared.
No, no fear.
Nah.
No fear of pain.
No. I've had pain my entire life. I'm in pain right now. I'm always in pain. There's been a lot less time in my life that I've been pain-free than the latter. So, I'm okay with pain. I've handled it very well my entire life. I plan on handling it well through this. I am handling it well through this. I'm not solely, relying on the drugs to make me feel better. I'm relying on interaction. I'm relying on being alive to make me feel better.
Sure.
The appreciation of still breathing.
That's a great topic. Like, talk to me more about that. Like, once this realization, like, hey, there's not much more I can do. The treatments they've gone as far as they can go. Once that sets into your mindset, do you feel like your outlook has changed on things? Has your perspective shifted?
A little bit, but I don't think it was like a noticeable amount. I think I was the first one on board with, I'm not making it through this. Like, once I got the diagnosis and I knew it was stage 4, and I did some, light research. Didn't take much. You Google it and you see what the survival rate is. And, like I didn't think I was anywhere near special enough to be part of that 3%. And, my factoring in the rest of my life, like, okay, this is my third time with cancer. So I already have all the scar tissue and all the shit still floating through my body from all the other treatments. Like, I didn't think at all in the beginning till now. My outlook has been the same. There's no way I'm surviving this. And I knew it from the very beginning. I went through, and after my second time with cancer, I thought, if I get diagnosed again, there's no way I'm doing treatments. Fuck treatments. They're terrible. I'm not doing them. So my perspective on that changed when I got diagnosed. I was like, well, all right, maybe we should do some chemo. But then it just kicked my ass so freaking hard. I mean, it put me to a level of like from the beginning, I was always like quality of life, quality of life, quality of life. I know I don't have much time left. I just want to have, with what time I have left, I want to have the best possible quality. The decisions I made didn't give me that at all. I decided to do the chemo. The first treatment that they treated with didn't work. They offered me a second treatment. The side effects from that were way worse than the first one. And I was like, I'm not doing that. I went to trials, and the side effects from that just, I lost a bunch more weight. It just didn't put me in it put me in the physical shape I figured I would be in without quality of life.
Sure.
So if there's regrets in anything at all, it's that I pushed the treatment further than I wanted to. And I know it's based on, people surrounding me. When I went for the consultation for the trials, I was basically a no. And then, I saw my mom's face and was like, why are you giving up? And I was like, well, I don't give up. What are you talking about? I think if I was able to explain my outlook a little bit better, I wouldn't have done the trials. I don't know if I'd be here now.
I was going to ask, do you think it bought you more time?
I don't know.
And you'll never know. There's no way to look
back. And you'll never
back.
know because the doctors don't know.
Sure.
So, like right now, I don't know how much time I have left. I'm guessing 3 to 6 months based on what the doctor told me a year ago that I have. It was actually probably 6 months ago. I asked her what kind of time I had left, and she said, with my blood work looking as good as it looks, I would guess somewhere between 12 and 18 months. But who knows? In 3 months, your blood work could tank, and you could have 3 months left. She said it's really difficult to tell, and I get that. Like, how the hell are you supposed to predict the future? Sure. So, depending on how I feel in the morning, sometimes I wake up and I'm like, oh God, it's 2 weeks.
Yeah. I just shit.
Today's the day.
Do you? God, I can't even. Like, I'm trying to empathize. I'm like, put myself in your. I can't even fathom it. How do you judge a good day? Like, what makes you happy? What brings you joy? Now, like
now,
do you like? Is it the little things like, oh, like look at the cat doing something cute, or
yeah, it could be something that small. It could be a text message that I get from somebody that I didn't expect. It could be a phone call that I get from somebody that I didn't expect. Most of the time, it's more I'm walking in the door. Honestly, if it's a weekday, I spend my whole day alone watching TV and playing some video games. Lately it's been if I have the energy and the strength to play Mortal Kombat for an hour. It's pretty sad, but anything that keeps my mind occupied. Not that I have trouble with overthinking, which is shocking to me because I've always been an overthinker. But just passing the time with a little bit more excitement than just sitting and staring. But I've been catching up like on a bunch of old movies and shit, like old Rockies and stuff.
Sure.
Like I'll just, I'll wake up in the morning and throw the TV on and be like, oh, this is Rocky 1. Oh, Rocky 2. Oh, Rocky 3 is available too. And I'll just watch all
clear
three.
My calendar.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's not much excitement anymore. I would love to be able to jump on my motorcycle and take it for a ride, but risk factor, risk versus reward. At this point, it's still too cold. Even at 60 degrees, I couldn't really take that temperature. And then the strength that I have now, like I'd be able to go around the corner maybe once or twice, and maybe I'll do that before I'm gone. A good day now is just a day with the least amount of pain and nausea and vomiting. I don't really skate through a day without throwing up at all. But if I get through a day where I just throw up once real quick, that's a good one.
It's a win.
Yeah.
It's a win.
Yeah.
Here's something that none of us have the answer to. What do you think happens when we die? Do you have we didn't touch at all on religion or God or spirituality or any of that stuff, but
I have I have a couple different thoughts. Most of my life I thought there's nothing. You just turn off like a robot. That's it. Just goes to black and then you cease to exist, which people can't wrap their minds around. I don't know if that's influence from religion. Life experience has taught me some other things, and I think that there is another plane of existence. I don't know how involved that plane is with this plane, but I've seen some involvement that can't be explained any other way. Like my mom went to a medium a couple times, and some of the stuff that medium told her, there's no doubt in my mind it came directly from my father's mouth. No doubt in my mind. The things that she knew, and there's just no doubt in my mind that it came from my father's mouth. So I think he is out there still somewhere, and I will be too. And that's kind of what I'm holding on to. So,
yeah. Have you had any kind of like near-death experiences where you're in treatment or coming out of surgery where you've had something like, wow, that's not from this world?
The only thing I ever had was when I had my heart surgery. I have a memory of seeing myself on the operating table, but it was after everything was done. I was intubated and I was all wrapped up and already closed up and everything. And it was a brief moment where I was looking down on myself in the bed. I don't know if it was like in the surgery room, or if it was in ICU, or if it was in recovery or whatever, but I remember looking down and seeing the shape I was in and thinking, man, that guy's fucked. And that was a weird thought. And then I woke up early, which every surgery I ever had, I always woke up early. I don't know why.
Anesthesia, you're a big boy.
Yeah. I guess the doctthat didn't really factor in for my size. So I woke up early with the tubes in my throat and was like struggling to breathe. So that memory stuck with me a little bit. But the floating out of the body was probably the weirdest one. I don't know if it was real. I don't know.
Sure, it's a hallucination or dream or something. Yeah. It's so interesting to think like, what are we really, right? It's a body, right? There's a physical body. We've got our brain, which does all the thinking. And is that it? Is it just the physical body and your brain doing the thinking? Or is there some kind of spirit that animates it all?
Good Lord, that's a rabbit hole.
Something will never know until that time comes.
I think that's the most interesting part about it. I don't really ever see where fear plays a factor in dying. I guess fear of the unknown, but I think curiosity is more my speed. I'm very curious. Like granted, if I had my way, I wouldn't be answering this question for myself until I was well into my 70s or 80s, but I get to know now. I get to know the question that has plagued humanity forever. What happens when you die? And I get to find out pretty soon. So I'm not scared. Like I said before, the biggest thing on my mind is the people that I'm leaving behind. That's it. If I put that into perspective, I know they'll be fine.
Sure.
I'm not the first person to die in their lives. I won't be the last person to die in their lives. Everybody will be fine. Everybody will be completely fine. As far as people worrying about me, I'll be fine. I'll be fine. My struggle will be over. My pain will be gone. Everything will be completely fine. I don't know how I'm going to go. I don't know when I'm going to go. But it is kind of a mind fuck knowing that you're going. Just trying to deal with that, with knowing your time is up. Might not be today. Might not be tomorrow. But you definitely won't see this point next year again. Like, I'm not going to survive another birthday. So my birthday's in a week and a half. And I'll be 48 forever. Knowing that is a little weird when you really get down and think about it. I had a great life, man. I can't complain. I really can't. I did whatever the fuck I wanted, whenever the fuck I wanted. If somebody had a problem with it, I punched them in the face. Like I did what I wanted when I wanted. I had great people throughout my life. I had freaking just some of the most solid people as friends. You being one of them. You know, I mean, we've known each other forever. I can't complain. I really can't. I've had more than 3 loves of my life. I've had 3 loves of my life. And I think at this point, I'm with the very best one that I could have ever been slotted with. She's just an incredible little lady. Looking back, there's nothing to regret. I think people that have regrets just overthink it. Life's been a journey, 47 years of living exactly how I wanted. Maybe at times doing things I didn't want to do because I had to do it. I don't look back at that and go, well, that fucking sucked. I look back at that and I go, well, this is what I learned from that. You fuck around, you're going to find out, you know?
Fuck around and find out. Oh, it's beautiful, brother. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your willingness to sit down and do this. You motivated me when we were texting a couple weeks ago. I'm like, gotta get my shit together. Gotta get this off the ground. So I thank you.
You blew me away with your equipment. So
it's pretty impressive, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a beautiful ending. Is there anything else you want to share? No?
Nah, I think I'm good. I feel good with that.
I love you, brother.
Love
It's
you too,
a
man.
legacy that will live on. Thank you
Yes.
for doing this.
No problem.
All right, over and out.